I'm Brendan Banahan of The Internationalist. As a company, we focus on connecting the people and ideas in marketing worldwide through content, intelligence, thought leadership, and collaboration on a variety of platforms. The Internationalist created the concept of marketing makes a world of difference in 2012 before the word purpose became part of the marketing vernacular. This is now one of marketing's most significant callings, making a world of difference through a deeper understanding of the complex dynamics and outcomes of purposeful marketing strategies while demonstrating the importance of the marketing function within the corporation. As part of our ongoing research, called the Internationalist Insight Survey, we conducted a study in 2020 among marketers worldwide to understand more about their sentiments on the evolution of purpose in a tumultuous year.
Perhaps we are all cautiously approaching Purpose 2.0, which I think is a much better option than purpose paralysis.
I'd like to introduce Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist, to discuss some of the survey results and their implications for marketers. Welcome, Deborah.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
The existence of a, quote, purpose gap to me may be the most significant aspect of the Internationalist Insight Survey. But let's define purpose gap for a minute.
Okay. We've defined purpose gap as the difference between the stated values of any brand or organization and the actions taken. In other words, are the communications and actual behavior in sync? And yes, a purpose gap does exist today according to our research. In our new era of stakeholder capitalism and corporate citizenship, there's little surprise that a whopping 65.5% of marketers worldwide see a disconnect. It's also clear that today's social issues are at the heart of this divide between values and actions.
Can you talk about any of the comments that may make this a bit clearer?
Yes, gauging by the comments we received, there's little question that today's climate of social unrest is at the heart of the perception of a purpose gap, or the blending of being a good corporate citizen with having a brand purpose. One voice put forward, if you're reacting to events, by definition, you're not focusing on the things that are important to the brand and may not be doing much at all for your brand purpose. Yet another suggested that responding to social issues is now table stakes. You get in trouble if you don't do it, but it's not going to differentiate you if you do. So that's actually, I'd say, the definition of today's marketer dilemma. Let me just bring up another point from someone. I think many people have heard of Niall Ferguson. He's not only the author of 14 books, but he's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford and a senior fellow at the Center for European Studies at Harvard. And he has warned in his talks on capitalism in crisis that if your company has not been in the crosshairs, or as he says, let me be more precise, has not been on the receiving end of a Twitter storm, then don't worry, it soon will be. One gaffe will do it. One slip, one lapse can get traction on social media in an enormously rapid way, and it can escalate in a terrifying way.
I think terrifying is the right word, certainly. But what is the impact on brand growth then?
Well, that's actually a very good question. And significantly, we're now seeing new information on the economic impact of not being identified as purposeful. According to Forrester Research, it was a study that they conducted in 2019 by Harley Manning, who's an analyst in the company's customer experience practice. 25% of firms will lose more than 1% of revenue by responding poorly to a social issue. Now, keep in mind, this was calculated prior to the events of 2020, so it's easy to imagine that the potential for lost revenue may now be higher. According to Manning, 41% of U.S. consumers want to do business with brands that reflect their political, social, or ethical values. He comments, that's big. And he continues, we're not saying that every company should suddenly declare that they have really intense social values that they don't have. We're just saying that you need to understand how many of your customers feel really deeply about their values to the point that you could lose them to someone who has those values. I think it's very interesting that Mark Pritchard, who's the chief brand officer of Procter & Gamble, has spoken frequently about how change creates choice. His message: people want to know what brands are doing. There was a time, he said, when you wouldn't go near social issues. People now expect brands to take a stand.
Can you talk more about the evolution of purpose in the midst of COVID?
Well, there is some hesitancy among marketers in taking a stand about whether purpose is changing with COVID-19. While slightly more than half, according to our research, so 52%, believe that purpose remains the same for their brands and organizations, slightly less than half, 48%, feel that their purpose is now different. Perhaps one commenter summed it up best. Some have changed their purpose, and not always for the better. Others have adjusted or tweaked it to reflect the reality of what we're all going through. But in the main, purpose should remain consistent and should have been crafted to endure both good and challenging times. After all, isn't that the whole point? Yes, there will be startups and generations that haven't lived through such challenges, but if they don't adjust, they will fade.
So, do you think this is the litmus test for the purpose-driven brand?
Well, let me try to answer that with an example. Chris Brandt, who is the CMO of Chipotle, is responsible for all marketing activities. And he also has an amazing gift for making the complex not only simple, but inspirational. He recently discussed how he makes purpose a priority. He says, do right for the people in your company, do right for the planet, and do right for your consumers. He is very much a believer in acts before words. He says no matter what your purpose, as long as you live it, you're okay. He advocates be, then do, then say. In other words, refrain from communicating your purpose until it is ingrained in the organization and all stakeholders. According to Brandt, for purpose to be a priority among all constituents, you must live it, then make sure all the actions support precisely what your brand stands for. Only after you've achieved those first two elements can you start talking about purpose in any communications. Some believe we are entering the global test of the purpose-driven brand. As the impact of coronavirus on human, social, and economic issues continues to be revealed, many brands are facing unforeseen, difficult choices about the future of their businesses. American entrepreneur Mark Cuban recently commented that the decisions a company makes during this pandemic define their brand for decades. Yet, not every marketer agrees.
Is there a good example?
Well, I think one of the best is Deborah Wall, who's the global CMO of General Motors. She addressed her fellow marketers in October about how society is at an inflection point. She asked, can we use this moment for permanent positive change? Uncomfortable conversations will provide permanent lessons on how we frame our roles, our teams, and the role of brands. How we lead now will shape our roles for years to come. The crisis of 2020 provided opportunities to contribute. They certainly opened my eyes to completely new possibilities. So, I guess to sum it up, it seems to me that being home has not only caused us to ask where we want to be, but more significantly, who we want to be, and how we want to live, and how we hope to treat both our fellow human beings and the planet. Well, perhaps we are all cautiously approaching Purpose 2.0, which I think is a much better option than purpose paralysis.
Isn't that true? And it's also a good place to end today's segment. Thanks very much, Deborah.
Thanks, Brendan.
Today's transparent social media environment has dramatically shifted the rules of, quote, doing good business, and marketing leaders throughout the world are evolving to address new challenges and opportunities. The assumption of responsibility, the authenticity of purpose, and the adoption of greater transparency are now critical to how any brand or business plays its proper role in society. The Internationalist Marketing Makes the World a Difference initiative will help to ensure that this happens. Please tune into our next podcast or visit our website It's theinternationalist.com, but please note that there is a hyphen between the and internationalist. Thanks very much, everyone. Today's podcast was made easy by Rivet 360. For more information, please visit rivet360.com.